Hi there, and welcome to Harvest Development Group's Do Good Better live stream events. Today, we're very fortunate to have Staci Lowell. Staci comes from us from Giving Insight, where she is the president of that consulting firm. The topic today is using your data to identify your best prospects for giving during these challenging times. And Staci's got an expertise in donor data and prospect research. She's in the Cleveland, Ohio area. We're very fortunate to have Staci with us. So welcome, Staci.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm so happy to be here today.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about, what your thoughts are, maybe some advice or some guidance you can give to our nonprofits. As we know, we've done a lot of surveying and questionnaires during this period, and the number one real issue to most nonprofits is finance, fundraising. How are they going to survive this period? And so hopefully, Staci, you're going to give us some insight on that.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm happy to help. And this is hopefully a way to help you guys figure out the best people to be talking to in the midst of this unprecedented circumstance. So what I do typically when I work with clients is I take their donor data and help them analyze it in a way and structure it in a way that helps them figure out who their best potential prospects are for communicating. And what I've heard generally right now, some of the best advice that I've received right now about donor communication and reaching out is to find those top people so that you can continue your relationship with them. Maybe you're not, running right out and asking them for, $1 zillion off the top, but that you're showing them that you care about them, that they're important to you, and you're reaching out. And so you can't talk to all of your constituents that way because we'd be spending all of our time and your whole staff would be just making phone calls. So it's figuring out who those top people are to communicate with so that those people then hopefully, once you get to the point where you can start asking, that you're targeting and focusing on the right people. So
So what are some real good resources that that the nonprofits could be using to help in this endeavor?
So the best donors to find are the people that are already in your database. And that's just a rule in general, whether that's in the COVID-19 crisis or just in general. And so what I recommend is taking a look in your donor database and finding some key things about your donors that can help you kind of target and maybe run some reports to find those people. So because they're there, they already have demonstrated that they care about your organization. And so they're going to continue to care once this is over, and they probably care now. So things to look at are things that you would normally code in your donor database. So looking at things like flags, or sometimes in your database, they're called attributes, or they could be called groups, things that would show a person's relationship to your organization. So volunteers, vendors, people who are on your boards and other committee members, those people, you want to make sure that you're making a note to reach out to those people in this time. Also, looking at other data about those people and their giving behaviors can help you figure out who the right target are. And so typically what I recommend is looking at a number of different criteria in your database. And so a good place to start for that is looking at people's recency of giving, their frequency of giving, and how much they've given. And I have some general tips for like specific reports to write if you'd like to hear those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So the first key one would be looking at whatever you define as a major gift. If your organization is a large organization and $1,000 is what you consider a major gift, or $5,000. Some organizations, $250 is a major gift to you. So looking for donors who have given that amount or more anytime within the last 3 years. That pool of people are people that you would consider an important donor to you. And you may or may not already be talking to them individually, but these are new people that you might want to reach out to. So anybody who's given a major gift recently. The other group would be people who have given a total of a larger amount. So if maybe they've given a bunch of small $25 gifts, but that equals $5,000 overall time. Those people are also good donors to start thinking about how you want to communicate with them, and maybe sending them just a nice note or reaching out with a phone call to say, we care about you. We hope you're doing okay in the midst of these times. That can open up a line of communication for, further contact. So those are the giving amount related totals that I would start looking at. And then another group of people, maybe they don't give a lot, but they might be still very connected to your organization. And then that's people who've given often. So I look at maybe donors who have given more than 10 gifts within the last 5 years. So people who are giving more frequently than annually, but they also have given recent gifts. Those people might be people to focus on. And then the last group, this is always a little tangential, but if a person happens to live in a wealthy zip code, and I can give you a resource for finding those wealthy zip codes, but anybody who gave this year that lives in a wealthy zip code, so a recent donor that lives in somewhere where there's known wealth, might be somebody to think about looking at talking to as well.
In those wealthy zip codes, do they come from a database or some sort of tool that you use?
Yeah, there are a number of resources out there, and if you reach out to if you just look on Google and look up wealthy zip codes, you'll get a number of lists. One that's really particularly useful is the Experian, like the credit card data. They have a list and a nice graphic also showing wealthy zip codes, and I can send it's a longer web address, but I will send that. I'll put that on the Facebook page, and if I can show a picture, I'll send also a picture of it shows the whole United States and the wealthiest zip codes and where they're concentrated. So you can easily see if a wealthy zip code is near you.
Or do you want to share your screen right now?
Sure.
There's the green.
Yeah, I absolutely can. Hold on one second. I will share my screen. So hopefully, can you see?
Yeah, I can see.
Yep. Okay, let me put it in the slideshow mode so it looks prettier. This is the whole country, and you can see it's each one is highlighted, and if there's a higher concentration, obviously the circle is bigger, but you can see the actual wealthy zip codes. And then actually, if you click on this link, which I will put in the Facebook page, it'll get you to that place as well. So you can see all the wealthy zip codes kind of across the country. And that's based on property records data. And so it's usually fairly accurate. And it's, just because a person that lives in a rich area happens to give you a gift doesn't necessarily mean that they have the inclination to give you a large gift, but at least it's some way to take your giant list and narrow it down to a smaller pool of prospects.
Absolutely. That's a great tool. Thank you. Good graphic. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that Experian data is pretty good. So, yeah.
I've worked for some nonprofits. We looked at Zillow as a tool to look at value of homes for some of the donors that we've had. We also have some donor screening tools.
Yes.
Do you recommend any of those donor screening tools?
Absolutely. I think donor screening, that just adds another layer of information on top of your donor data. And that can be really, really useful for, again, just figuring out who the right people to talk to are. And so I've utilized a variety of them, and I can give you a list of the ones that are kind of out there. There's Wealth Engine, there's Donor Search, there's iWave, there's Target Analytics. Those are like the main ones. The one that I use, and the one that seems to be best, get the best reputation amongst prospect researchers, is Donor Search. Mm-hmm. I like that because when they give you scores and recommendations about a person's giving capacity, they're not just basing that on a person's wealth. They're basing it on their wealth in combination with their philanthropic giving. Mm-hmm. And that is I think it gives you a little more accurate picture. So doing a data screening can be really useful. If you don't have that in your budget, you can do some basic information searching. Another great tool is that's in relation to using Zillow for home values is looking at your own, your local county records for home values as well. And there's a database actually of all of those. So if you want to find all of the ones across the country, you can look at, it's www.pulowski.net. It's a tax assessor database. It's PULAWSKI.net. And that actually gives you links to all of the tax assessors across the country, so you can see all of that information really quickly and easily.
Wow. And I just wanted to share that, so some of these tools like Wealth Engine and Donor Search are available at public libraries. I know
Yes.
the city of New Haven has made it available to nonprofits, so they buy a subscription that others can use. And I also know that some of the community foundations also provide that information. So there are free or low cost ways to get some of this data. So talk to your partners as well as, doing this type of web searches, I think are helpful.
Definitely. And another tool that you can use is that might be available through your library. And this is for grants, not necessarily individual gifts, but I'm sure everybody has, well, not everybody may, but most people may have already heard of Foundation Directory Online, which can be searched for grant opportunities. That's a little different than your individual fundraising, obviously, but there may be some opportunity there. There also might be a way to find individuals who are connected to a family foundation. Those people are people that may have wealth and obviously a philanthropic inclination. So they may be more willing to give than somebody who isn't connected to a foundation.
Absolutely. So the Foundation Directory Online, that lists all the family foundations that are available out there.
Yeah, it's a directory of all the tax, well, it has a variety of different things, but every foundation has to produce 990. So all of the 990s are collected there. And what the value add of the Foundation Directory Online is that it also adds on like information about the areas of interest of a particular organization, what they may support. So it makes it a little easier to search than just looking at all the 990s from all of the foundations out there. You can kind of search by topic and say, I'm this type of organization. Let me find grants that go to this type of organization. So
excellent.
That can be really useful.
Great. Okay. Now, one thing we talk to our clients about is trying to diversify. So not only looking at private foundations and individual donors, but corporate giving. Are there any resources that you've come across on how to find partners in the corporate giving area?
Sure. That's a little harder to come by because there's less public information out there on corporations, especially private corporations, because it doesn't need to be publicly disclosed. So sometimes it is doing some creative Google searching. Sometimes it is finding people that you are associated with in your database and seeing their connections to an organization. So like employees of at higher levels in an organization. So some ways to find those are honestly just doing a search for a particularly large organization in your geographic area, plus the word sponsorship or plus the word partnership or giving. That does require you to do a lot of like Google, just scrolling through the Google pages, but that can really give you the information that you may need. If the organization happens to have their own foundation, that information would be available in Foundation Directory Online, and they often will have a page on their own corporate website that talks about their sponsorship, their sponsorships, their grant making opportunities and things like that. So I would start first by, if you know of an organization that's in your community. Typically, most organizations really only fund, most corporations only fund organizations that are in their geographic area. Are you having a hard time?
Nope, you're
Oh,
there.
okay. I just couldn't tell. So they fund organizations in their geographic area, and so I would think of the largest corporations in your area, maybe doing a drill down using the highest gift totals to your organization first, like running a list out of your database and saying, in Cleveland, Key Bank, the Cleveland Clinic, those types of organizations that are major employers, major organizations, see how much they've given you, sorted by that way, and then start digging in, looking at that organization's website, their giving pages, and then going into Foundation Directory online and seeing if there's any further information you can find out about it. If you can't access Foundation Directory online, and you still want to be able to see 990 data and look at the tax returns, I've found that ProPublica, which is just at www.propublica.com, they collect 990s from organizations, and so you can easily search for an organization through ProPublica and dig into their 990 data as well, and that's free. You don't have to pay anything extra. So if you can't get the Foundation Directory online, you can still find that information. It just requires a little extra digging.
And that's www.propublica.
Yes.
Great.
And
Okay.
I'll put all of these on Facebook for everybody so you can see that.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Super. So what are some other ideas or tools we should be using?
So it all depends on what your donor database can do, but typically a donor database has within it the ability to either connect or to do direct emails or communications out of the system. So generating your lists out of the system can be helpful too. So oftentimes what you would do is create a query or a filter, depending on what the name of that is in your donor database, that collects this information. And sometimes you can do that with one big pull out of your system. Sometimes it will require multiple pulls of your data. And then oftentimes that will then allow you to create a mailing list or an email list so that you can then directly communicate with those people. One thing I highly recommend is pulling that information out of your system, but then also making a record in your system that this was done, because noting the fact that you've communicated with a person, whether it's individually or through a more mass relationship, helps you know how responsive this person is, which then builds a history over time to know whether or not that person is really interested in giving to you. So this is a time to start doing that if you're not already doing that, so that you can know moving forward even better who your prospects are that are most engaged and most interested in giving to you. So I think your next step really is, after kind of filtering in and out the people that you're selecting, kind of figuring out who you're going to communicate with and how you're going to communicate with them. One thing I would recommend is that you may also have some information about in your database, is thinking about your donors by how they'd like to receive that information. So think about their age, maybe how they've communicated with you in the past. So looking back at your communications from prior, so if they're only responding via email or online, you might want to communicate with them about COVID, or about how you're, just reaching out to say, how are you, by email. If they've only sent you physical checks, or if they've only communicated with you that way, or by phone, then I would utilize those communication methods to reach back out. So using the information that you already have in your system can also tell you how a person likes to receive information. So and sometimes just age can tell you that as well. So if you have birth date data in your database, younger people tend to be more tech savvy Not always, but sometimes. And so you might send an email blast to those people, but send a physical letter or a handwritten note to your higher level donors that are in an older age group.
Great. And then, you seem to have a wealth of information about these donor databases. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the ones that you might recommend? We always get questions from nonprofits about
Sure.
what's a good CRM to use, and what are some of the pluses and minuses.
Sure, absolutely. I work in a variety of donor databases, and you can make pretty much anything work in any database. So I don't want to say that there's one that's like the, be all end all, but one that I find is particularly user-friendly and inexpensive is a system called Little Green Light. I don't know, have you ever heard of that system?
Yep. I used it for 3 years when I ran a Hillel up at University of Connecticut.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, I've worked with the Cleveland Hillel. That's great. They're a great organization. Yes, so Little Green Light, I think, is very user-friendly, simple to use, very accessible to somebody who is not technical. Oftentimes what I think of when I think about like what works best for my clients is the clients that need me least after I leave a project. And the clients that need me least are my Little Green Light clients. They catch on faster and they feel more comfortable using the system. And what's great about Little Green Light is that it has a lot of integrations that already exist with it that in many other systems you have to pay extra for. So things like connecting to your previously existing MailChimp or Constant Contact, doing Little Green Light forms can allow you to accept online donations and event registrations. There is an events module that's associated with Little Green Light. So it's pretty universal and can be used in a lot of settings, and it tends to work great. But I also, depending on the organization, that may or may not be appropriate. So if you're a large hospital system, for example, I would say Little Green Light probably doesn't have all the detail that you need. And a system like Razor's Edge or Donor Perfect or something like that might be good. So it really depends on the individual organization, but I've found that LGL, it tends to be my favorite.
Great. So what are some other tools that we can use that maybe we don't own, but maybe we can log into or link into, that would be a good way for us to find maybe the behaviors of some of our donors?
So yeah, so there's a couple tools like that that are out there, and I think so there's one called RELSci, and that is, it's RELSci, like relationship science, but shortened RELSCI. And I'm not sure if you've heard of LexisNexis, but I'm sure everybody's probably heard of it. But it's like that LexisNexis data, but sort of in a little more accessible format. Oftentimes you can search for a RELSci profile. There is a slight fee. I don't think it's very much. I think it's like $15 a month or something pretty small. And you can get information about you can search for little mini profiles of donors. I've found it's not complete information, but it's a nice start. So oftentimes I'll use that resource to find out, where a person works. They connect some news articles about that person, and you can find who they're connected to as well, which is often useful as well. And another tool that I've used that I find is particularly helpful for finding out what a person might be interested in supporting, especially if they give to organizations like yours, as well as knowing how big of gifts that they give. Like if there might be a person that has $1 million zillion, but they might only give $250 gifts to a million different organizations. So that person, you don't go after for a major gift. And that system is called NOSA. Have you ever heard of NOSA?
No.
It is an annual report database. So what they do is they collect all of the organizations out there that they can find annual report data on, and classify them according to topic, and give the giving amount if it's available. So that's searchable by topic, by an individual person's name, and you can see a giving history for a person. That is about $100 a month. And so, it may be that right now, while you have some time and maybe limited funds, it might you might want to just spend $100 and search for your donors and see what else they're giving to. That could be a useful way to spend some time.
Absolutely.
And not too expensive.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any kind of last bits of wisdom that you could parlay to us?
Oh, goodness. I think one of the things that I find is the best additional use of time. It may not feel like it's directly impacting things, but it will, is to really take a look at the way you've structured your data in your database. Oftentimes I've found that information has been applied inconsistently from, usually it seems like when a new staff member comes in, they start inputting data in a database a certain way, and then they leave, and then somebody else decides, oh, that's not the way to do it, and they don't clean up the past data. And so it's really hard to run reports finding apples to apples comparative data. So what I would recommend doing is just doing a quick audit of, if you have time and you're looking for some productive way to spend your time, this might be good. Looking at codes, typically there's like 5 codes that are your backbone of your database. Your constituency codes, sometimes those are called donor types, sometimes they're just called constituent types, something like that, that shows like a big bucket, like I'm a corporation, I'm an organization, I'm an individual. Look at those codes. Look at things that are sometimes called attributes or flags or groups that show how you're related to the organization. Make sure you've got correct and complete data, especially about trustees, your other closely related organizations, some recent volunteers, vendors, that type of information. Make sure that's complete. And then on the gift side, making sure that when you're looking at the, usually they're called campaigns, funds and appeals, or they might be called campaigns, general ledgers and solicitations. There are a variety of different ways they're called, but there are 3 different sets of codes, making sure that they're consistent at least for the last 5 years, because that's usually what's predictive of future giving behavior. So as long as you're making those codes consistent, looking back 5 years, you can use that data then to predict what can happen in the future.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this has been great. This is probably a great time to be looking at our data, where if we're not busy with other types of activities, or we're at a nonprofit that isn't responding to the COVID issue, this is a great time to be looking inward and looking at our data and how to best use our data to inform our giving. So I really appreciate this. This has been very insightful. So thank you very much. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Staci, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. You can look me up online. My website is www.giving-insight.com. And you can email me. I can put this, I can share this with you, but it's just SLOWELL@giving-insight.com as well. Feel free to reach out. I also am on Facebook. So, if you want to Facebook message me, I will respond. I know it's not the most sexy topic or the most fun, but hopefully it will, this time can be used and hopefully it'll help leverage gifts now and into the future for organizations.
Absolutely. And if you need to get in touch with Staci, you can always come through Harvest Development Group, and we'll pass on the information. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow, and everyone take care. Thank you again, Staci.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.